Well, like what kind of miracles do you see?
Well, just to give you some recent, I have many. We could be here for a long time. You know, I just came back from a trip overseas. Father Kev and myself went to 8 countries. And recently in one of the countries, Poland or Germany, and which one, but this woman came to me and she said to me, you know, Sister Briege, I asked one of my professors that works with me at the university to come to the Mass and the Eucharistic healing service. She's a Catholic, but she said, Mass, it's a bit boring, you know. And she said, well, you know, Sister Briege has a book out called Miracles Do You Have? No, she said, I'm very interested in miracles. And that was the bait. She was curious about healing, so she came. And at that particular gathering, the bishop said the Mass, and she told herself how she thought, oh, I hope the Mass gets over soon to hear what this nun's going to say. Well, anyway, I gave a talk, and afterwards we had a Eucharistic healing service, you know, with the Blessed Sacrament. And she's very touched by, because I'm a great believer, Father Mitch, that, as I say in this little book, you know, lots of students go into college to market products.
Right.
Okay, everybody you talk to today is going to market something. Some of them we don't need, the marketing products they give us. But for us as Catholics, I'm always saying we need to market what we have. We need to be convincing. We need to, you know, speak about it with conviction. So anyway, I was telling the people, now this sacred host that you're looking at, this is Jesus. And seemingly at one point I said, open your eyes and look at the host and realize that that is the same Jesus who walked the earth. You're seeing a host, but he's seeing somebody he loves and he died for. And you look at it. Anyway, 2 days later, the professor goes back. That was on like a Saturday, Sunday. She goes back to the university and she meets her friend and she said, oh my God, let me tell you what happened. She said, I went to Mass, listened, at the healing service. I had my eyes closed and I was really crying because I was very moved by the things Sister was praying for. And then all of a sudden, she said, open your eyes and look at Jesus. He's in front of you. She says, I open my eyes and the bishop is standing right in front of me with the monstrance, looking right. And just this power went through my whole body. I was flooded with joy. And at the same time, the deep sense came to me, go to confession and meet Jesus. She went home, went to confession, and she said, you know, I went to 3 Masses on Sunday and 2 on Monday.
This is the lady who said that Mass was boring.
Yes, and that was just about a month ago. That's the first, and I mean, talk about, and I see this many times with the Eucharist. I tell people, you know, that the sacrament, especially the Mass, you know, that read the Passion and ask yourself, where would you be? And you know, from going to the Holy Land, you know, when you go to these places, or you go to Oberamaga, you know, the Passion play, and you see it all dramatized, and you think, I mean, how horrible those people are that they didn't know, and things they said. Ask yourself, where would you be? Which one of those characters are you in the Passion? Now, you go to Mass. That is the Passion, Death and Resurrection. And then I challenge, you know, and try and talk to them. And it is amazing. This is why this little book on the sacraments with the stories, because people respond when you tell them. But the other happened with Father Kevin. You know, I work with Father Kevin, who knows you well too.
Right.
And last month we were giving a priest retreat for about 180 priests. And Father Kevin always begins the priest retreat the first day with confession, because he always says to the priest, you know, in a lot of retreats they have it the 3rd or 4th day, and he always says, better get rid of all the baggage and we're going to have a healing service the next day. And you know, I mean, it's great to go the first night. Now, at the end of this particular retreat, the priests were giving testimony, and 3 priests came up to the microphone and said they wanted to speak. The first man had a severe back problem and hadn't slept, wasn't able to walk hardly with his back for years. And as he walked out of confession, he was completely healed. The second man had a dead arm, priest at the same retreat, who'd gone to Father Kevin to confession. His arm was healed. But the third was very interesting because there was a young friar, Franciscan, and he had decided he was leaving the priesthood. And he had come on this retreat because a friend of his had said, you know, you should really try. And he thought, confession, you know, I'll go. But he wasn't, he had made up his mind, nothing was going to change, and he was going through a real faith crisis. He went to confession, and he said during the confession with Father Kevin, he had the most dramatic encounter with Jesus. And I said to him afterwards, you know, he came to me because Father Kevin had to leave because there was a death in his family. So I was there listening to this, you see, and he was all excited. I looked at him, I said, now listen, Father, you're a priest. Don't you know that in the sacrament of confession that Jesus comes? So why are you surprised? Because, you know, this is the other thing, Father Mitch, that we forget, you know, that, you know.
We sometimes, I think, we get into the danger of thinking that we are doing it all.
Yes.
I'm doing some psychological counseling here.
Yes.
Or some sort of therapy or whatever might be in the priest's mind. And that's not what it's about.
Oh,
it's
no.
about meeting Jesus.
Yes, and one of the things that I say in the book, and which I often hear fathers saying in the streets, is that people say, like, we'll take the sacrament now of confession. You know, today, nobody, I mean, in many places where I go, and I'm sure the same with you, people don't go to confession. And they'll say, well, I don't sin.
I know it. I
You
know it. My favorite line is this, when they say, well, I don't really need to go to confession. I haven't murdered anybody, haven't stolen anything. And I always tell them, well, you sound like a pretty good person so long as you're comparing yourself to Al Capone.
Well, but they tell you this, and yet you turn on, of course, you wouldn't be turned on, you look at the Oprah Winfrey, look at Jerry Springer and all these, I just hear about them, and all these talk shows. Everybody's going to confession. Father Kevin's always saying this.
No, they're not confessing, they're bragging.
Oh, but really here.
They're
You go
bragging.
into a pub, you go to hairdressers. I hear confessions all the time in airplanes that tell me all their sin, the terrible things, but in the course of conversation, but they go to the wrong people. And people are going, but they're going to the wrong, they're not going to the priest.
Right.
And you see, I have to tell you, I was sharing today with Doug, you know, I was speaking to Doug Keck, that my brother Pether, whom I have to ask you, can I wish him, Pether, a very happy birthday.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Today is Pether's birthday, yes. And Pether, I know you're looking at me, so happy birthday. But Father Kev and myself went because Pether has been ill for some time, and Kathleen, his wife, and great people. And we went there, and all the neighbours were there. And Father Kevin has this beautiful charm of saying, we're going to have Mass in the house because, you know, Pether's cancer and they were sick. There were a lot of other sick people there. And he said, well, maybe you'd like to go to confession. Yeah. And country people in Ireland, you know, it was beautiful because they talked a little bit about it. And you see, sometimes people will say, well, I never be out, so I don't sin. That's another great line, you see, when the missionary goes to visit the people, and I never be out, or as they say in Ireland. But I watched as each one of those people went and came out, and their comments. It was wonderful. Go into the priest, he's wonderful. You'll get a load lifted off your mind. And you could see that they believed. And see, this is the beautiful thing about it, that if people only knew that it is a therapy, but it's God's therapy.
Right.
But if the priests believe in it, because a lot of times, as you said, Father Mitch, people go into the priest, and I tell the priest this in my talks, look, Father, there's a lot of people don't know what's wrong with them, and they're troubled, and they're afraid to go to confession because they don't know how to go. They haven't been for years, or they need help. And I said, I know from my own experience and my prayer life that the priest has the gift of the word of knowledge, in the sense that God will inspire him. If he prays before, that person goes to them and he will say something, because I know from working with priests how many lives have been changed through priests who make confession a prayerful experience. And you know, people go all kinds of places looking for therapy and looking for help. And then, of course, you have the New Agers. They're not new, but you know who they are.
Right, right.
And they say, oh, you know, you can't, it's negative, you know, you can't accuse yourself. It's not your fault, you know, it's your grandmother's fault or it's somebody else's.
Some past life
or
something.
Some past life, yeah. And it takes humility to go to confession, to be humble and say. Now, I love to go to confession, not that it's easy, but because I know that you don't, you know, you get the grace to see yourself as you really are, and then you also get the grace to keep going.